We often hear the phrase, being on the right side of history. Being on the right side of history. But the truth is, history does not have sides. History does not take sides. History does not have a direction. It is men and women who do. And sometimes by doing so, they change the course of history. Which is why we are so excited today to officially launch a research and instructional institute dedicated to the advancement of the intellectual legacy of a person who's always taken the right side. Defending Nelson Mandela against the crimes of the apartheid, defending Russian dissidents against communism of the past and the fascism of the present, standing up against the Iranian regime, leading the global fight against antisemitism, advancing globally the right of Israel to exist in peace and security as the national home of the Jewish people. A distinguished professor of law, one of the most respected politicians in present-day or contemporary Canadian public life, a former Justice Minister of the Crown, and one of the greatest friends of Tel Aviv University, the Honorable Irwin Cotler. A lot of people joined together to make this institute a reality. It will not be possible to mention all of them, but I will just say one thing or two. I mentioned Erwin's many distinctions and achievements. I forgot to mention the most important one. He's actually more commonly known as the husband of Ariella Cotler. The president of Friends of Tau Association in Canada, and a true Eshet Chayil. Someone who literally wakes up in the morning and goes to sleep at night thinking about the future of this state. And the founding donation that made this institute possible was made by someone who actually it was very hard to convince him to even have his name on our website. So I will say just this. I think in giving a donation, there is simply no way of doing it more generously, modestly, and to the point, tachles, than that done by the very distinguished Richard and Elaine Dabrowski. And very briefly, I will just say that, everything made needs a matchmaker. So in our case, this was Vice President Amos Elad. I think he deserves your applause as well. And this institute, although we are launching it today, is actually in operation, almost full, since November. So its academic director, who did a lot during this year, is Dr. Karl Juncker. And I think he deserves a round of applause as well. Warm welcome to all of you. We didn't anticipate such a large audience. I was told the Kotlers have many friends. I didn't know they have so many friends. Special warm welcome to the Canadian ambassador, Lisa Staller. She will speak soon. Now, as you probably know from the title of this institute, it deals with democracy, justice, human rights, and I can also say Zionism, the fight against antisemitism, you have probably noticed that these are somewhat sensitive issues. And there is simply no logical and credible way of discussing them unless this is done in an academic environment of absolute freedom. For that, we owe a big thank you to the president of the university, Professor Ariel Porat, and I invite him to be the first speaker.
It's wonderful to see many friends here. It's an opportunity to thank those of you who came from abroad, that you decided to come, even though until yesterday there were hostilities, some military operation in Gaza, and we had the concern that some people might cancel their visit, so it's great to see you all here. There are many very distinguished visitors here, or people here that attend this event. I want to mention Dana Azrieli, one of the most generous donors in our country, in many causes in Israel, in other places, and also at Tel Aviv University. So Dana, it's wonderful to have you here. But there are so many people, Natan Sharansky, and you know, it's quite amazing. You know, I just heard from you a couple of minutes ago that Irwin was your lawyer when you're in prison, and that's by itself what else one could do in life than being your lawyer. I'm a law professor. I wish I could be your lawyer too, but I was then too young to do the job. Okay, so this is this institute, the Irwin Cotler Institute, is an institute about democracy, human rights, and justice. And there is a focus to this center, this institute, and the focus is combating anti-Semitism, combating BDS, combating racism. It's about strengthening human rights, and it's also about enhancing better understanding of Israel in the world. Now, let me make 2 points relating to these areas that I've just mentioned. So, first of all, about democracy and human rights. You know, some people might be confused and think that democracy means the rule of the majority. It is true that it is the rule of the majority, but we know that it's not only the rule of the majority. Any democracy should respect human rights, should respect rights of minorities. There is no democracy without protecting human rights. So if somebody might think erroneously that there is a tension between democracy and human rights, of course, this is a terrible mistake. Some people make such a mistake. Now, I'm not going to be political today, but before the establishment of the current government, there were, immediately after the elections, there were several extremists, later became members at the government, but then there were just Knesset members that suggested that the law should be modified and enable discrimination for what they called consciousness reasons in providing services, including medical services. So generally, the risk was that some people might, you know, if such a law is accepted, some people or some suppliers of services might discriminate, say, against minorities, against members of the LGBT community, and that was a risk that many of us thought that should be prevented. Tel Aviv University announced, I have written a letter to the campus, and it also came to the press, and what we have said, that even if such a law is accepted and so discrimination becomes lawful, Tel Aviv University would never collaborate or cooperate with any entity that would discriminate. What we have said is that such a law, if enacted, is unconstitutional. And it's a kind of a law that there is a black flag saying you should not obey such a law. And that shows something about human rights, democracy, and where Tel Aviv University stands in this kind of potential conflicts. This is the first comment I want to make about it. Now, the second one is about focusing on BDS, antisemitism, racism, etc. Now, of course, that these are not topics which are unrelated to each other, right? Whenever there is, once there is antisemitism, there is also BDS. And when there is racism, there is antisemitism. Right? With no racism, there is no anti-Semitism, and there is no BDS in my view. So there is a relationship between those. And of course, everything related in a way to one of the goals of this institute, which is to make the world better understand Israel. It's not that Israel is perfect, it is not. But sometimes, I think there is a feeling for many of us that we are blamed for things that we haven't done, and that triggers BDS, it triggers anti-Semitism. So if this institute would contribute even little to better understanding Israel in the world, if it would contribute to less anti-Semitism, to less BDS, I think that that's the most we could hope for. Now I want to say a few words about you, Irwin, and then about Ariella. So, Irwin Cotler, what can be said about Irwin Cotler that haven't been said? So, I'm not sure I would be able to add anything. But still, let me say that he's a very famous law professor, very influential in his field. He's, well, one more thing that I should mention, that he has an honorary degree from Tel Aviv University. And, of course, I think that most of people here know that he was also the Minister of Justice in Canada. But I think that most importantly, he's so loyal and devoted to the state of Israel, to the Jewish community. And he had done so much for both the Jewish community and the state of Israel that it's a real pride for us at Tel Aviv University to be associated with Irwin. So thank you very much, Irwin, that you are willing to be associated with us. It's a great honor and pleasure. And now about you, Ariella, right? So Ariella is, well, of course, everybody knows what a wonderful wife to Irwin she is, but that's not the main thing I want to say about her, of course. Well, one thing is that there is some family relationship, in a way, between Ariella and me. In what way, right? Through Meital. Where is Meital? So Meital Gilboa, she is a nephew of Ariella, and she was also my PhD student. Now she's a professor at Bar Ilan. So this is the family relationship that we have. Except of that, Ariella is such a devoted friend of Israel, of Tel Aviv University, and I want to believe of me in person. And, you know, this is not a coincidence that he is now the president, the national president of Tel Aviv University in Canada. She had done a lot, even though she is in office, I think, a little bit more than a year, right? She has done a lot, and we have so many expectations for her in the future, so it's so much to be done. Okay, let me also mention one more thing. I was informed, I hope it's not a mistake, right? You know, you take the risk, you should count on other people providing information to you. Sometimes this information is wrong, but as far as I was informed, Irwin had his birthday last week, and I think that Ariella is going to have her birthday, right, in a couple of days? Yesterday, okay. I felt that maybe the information is not accurate, but it's accurate enough. So Mazel Tov to your birthday. Now a few words about Uriah Shavit. Uriah is, first of all, he's the head of our Center for Contemporary Jewry, and he's a visionary. We are very happy and lucky that Uriah is going to be the head of this new institute that we inaugurate today. I'm sure that he would lead the institute to achievements as he had done with all other, through other roles that he have already had at Tel Aviv University. And it's an opportunity to thank you, Uriah, for the vision and also for designing together with Ariella and others this institute that I'm sure would make great things under your leadership. Of course, I want also to thank the Dean of the Faculty of Humanities that I think she couldn't come for some other events that she should participate, but of course the Institute is under the Faculty of Humanities, and we also should thank her for hosting, accommodating this institute. Now, I want to call you Rick. So Rick Dubrovsky is, first of all, he's the nephew, not the nephew, the cousin, sorry. The cousin, this is, so the cousin of Irwin. And Rick just returned from the Faculty of Medicine when an initiative of both the Cotler family and the Dubrovsky family, initiative on cancer research in memory of their late aunt and uncle, right, Eileen and Louis. So they have, those are the aunts and the aunt and the uncle of both Irwin and Rick. Now, so a few words about Rick. So he would talk in a minute, right? That's I think. Yeah, it's okay if you say a few words. But before that, just to say that Rick is a very central figure in both the Jewish and the business community in Montreal. He's a philanthropist. He have, together with his wife and family, donated to various causes in Canada, educational, social, medical. And we are very happy that you chose now Tel Aviv University as a place to invest. And I'm sure that would be a very good investment. So both the Faculty of Medicine and, of course, here, I should have mentioned maybe even at the beginning, that Rick is the founding benefactor of this, of the Irwin Cotler Institute. So thank you very much for being so generous to us. I think that this is the time for the certificate that we have for you. This is to witness that on the 14th day of May 2023, the Irwin Cotler Institute was inaugurated in the presence of the Honorable Professor Irwin Cotler, PC, OC, OQ, okay, and Mrs. Ariella Cotler, and Mr. Rick Dubrovsky, thereby creating a timely framework for combating anti-Semitism and Holocaust denial, safeguarding human rights, and deepening understanding of Israel in the global arena, significantly augmenting the contribution of Tau and Israel to international democracy studies through research, teaching, professional training, and public awareness, and associating Tel Aviv University with the esteemed standing of Professor Irwin Cotler, influential international attorney, parliamentarian, legal scholar, and champion of justice. Yes. Yeah.
And it is now my great honor to invite the Canadian ambassador to Israel, Her Excellency Lisa Stadelbauer. Said the German, the English one.
Thank you very much. Good evening, distinguished guests. It's a great pleasure for me to be here this evening representing Canada at this special event. And thank you to President Porat and Professor Chavit for inviting me this evening as we honor a very great Canadian, Professor Irwin Cotler. As you have heard, Professor Cotler is a former Minister of Justice in Canada, a former Attorney General, and the founder of the Raoul Wallenberg Centre for Human Rights. He's an officer of the Order of Canada, that was the OC after his name, and of the National Order of Quebec, that was the OQ after his name. These are among the very highest honours that we can bestow to Canadian citizens for performing extraordinary contributions to our country. For me to list all of his accomplishments and all of the awards that he has received would have far exceeded my time given to me this evening. So let me simply add that in 2020, Professor Cotler was made the Special Envoy of Prime Minister Trudeau on preserving Holocaust remembrance and combating anti-Semitism. That is how I have come, That's how I have come to know Professor Cotler over these past 2 years, and I am very grateful for everything that you have taught me during this time in this job. He's known to Canadians as a warrior for human rights and justice, and you will see why in this evening's film, First to Stand. He has dedicated his long career to human rights, the fight against racism, anti-Semitism, and hate, and it's very fitting that this institute that bears his name and honors his life work is at Tel Aviv University, because the ties between this university and Canada and Canadians are deep and strong. We work together to support joint research and to bring the results of that research to market. We have faculty and student exchanges between Tel Aviv University and Canadian universities. And in addition to the extraordinary contributions of Canadian philanthropists to this country amazes me on a daily basis. About $100 million of private Canadian money comes to this country every year. And we see it through things like the Friends of the Tel Aviv University, through the Azrieli Foundation, through the contributions of Rick and Elaine. There's also the Asper family from Winnipeg, which has a collaboration with Tel Aviv University to help bring clean drinking water to developing countries. We see it through Canadians like Sylvan Adams, who has created a sports institute here connected to McGill to do research around elite sports performance. And now this Irwin Cotler Institute will focus on the values that Canadians hold very dear: democracy, human rights, and justice. We look forward to seeing the results of what comes from this institute, whose mandate is all the more important now as we see increasing threats towards democracy and human rights worldwide. Congratulations, Professor Cotler, for receiving this very great honor. And thank you to Tel Aviv University for having the vision and the passion to create this institute, along with Ariella, along with Rick and Elaine, and for choosing such a deserving Canadian as this institute's namesake. Congratulations and thank you.
At this point, I can also send a warm welcome to those who are not here but are watching us through live feed on the Cotler website, the Cotler Institute website. If you want to visit the website in a few days, then it's very simple, kotler.tau.ac.il, and then you can see the video of this event. The flagship of the Institute is the Irwin Cotler Fellowship Program. It's not the only thing the Institute does, but that is the highlight. And here's the thing. Generally speaking, we are very privileged here with international students because they're usually the top 10% of their classes, from wherever it is that they come. And when we launched the Institute last October, I think it was, we were double lucky because we got practically dozens of applications, so we could really pick the best of the best. Maybe those of you who are actually Cotler Fellows would like to stand up for a second so they can see you. Thank you. They are a very diverse bunch from 15 different countries and from 6 different faculties, and they are really, really wonderful. And what is it that we actually do with them? Well, 3 things. First, and perhaps most important, we get to see Israel. which is not always the case for international students, travel around, see the country amid its very diverse population and many, many different and wonderful locations and people. Then we have around 20 lectures on democracy, human rights, justice, fighting racism, in particular fighting anti-Semitism and understanding its roots. And at the end of the program, or already while it is taking place, as was the case for some of them, they are delivering workshops on human rights or the fight against anti-Semitism or the history of Israel or whatever in their home countries, which are, as I mentioned, many, many different countries. We also, through them, organize workshops for professionals in different countries. So in 2 weeks from now, for example, we'll be in Finland and Latvia with the Finnish Justice Ministry and the Latvian police, instructing them and learning from them about fighting anti-Semitism, fighting racism at large. But you know what? It is perhaps better that they will tell you about the program. So I'm very happy to invite. Now we practice this, the pronunciation. Nurgul Guppinar. She's a lawyer from the Istanbul Bar Association. She's pursuing here a master's degree. I think she's a bit anxious this evening, but not because of speaking before you. And I invite you, Nurgul, please.
Dear distinguished guests and colleagues, my name is Nurgul, and I'm honored to speaking to you today as a fellow at Irwin Cotler Institute. After practicing law in Turkey for almost 4 years, I decided to pursue my LLM degree at Tel Aviv University in Israel, where I hope to gain new perspectives and experience Israeli culture firsthand. I must say it has been an amazing journey so far. I would like to start by expressing my gratitude to the Irwin Cotler Institute for providing me with the opportunity to expand my knowledge on various compelling topics and tragic historical events surrounding human rights, democracy, and justice, as well as giving me the chance to visit places and communities in Israel that I may not have encountered otherwise. During the program, I've gained a deeper understanding of the fight against antisemitism and racism in general, as well as the power of dialogue to create constructive change. Through the discussions with students from different parts of the world, I realized the importance of various points of view that contribute to a comprehensive understanding of the issues we face today. I'm grateful for the chance to be a part of this program and thankful to Professor Uriah Shavet and Dr. Karl Janker for their invaluable guidance and unwavering support. I look forward to using the knowledge and skills I've gained during the program to make a positive impact in my community and beyond. Thank you.
It was actually precisely 75 years ago that here in Tel Aviv, David Ben-Gurion declared Israel's independence. Just in case you missed that. And I have to tell you this. Ben-Gurion was an optimist, but I think even Ben-Gurion, the great optimist, would have never thought that 75 years later, the second Irwin Cotler Fellow to speak at this ceremony would be from the great nation of Indonesia. So it is my great honor to invite Aryo Bramantyo, who is really not just very talented, but one of the kindest persons I've ever known.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Shalom, dear friends and distinguished guests. Thank you for joining us today in celebrating this joyous and momentous occasion. My name is Arya Brahmantyo. I'm a Muslim, a native Javanese, and I come from a distant country known as Indonesia. For the past 7 months, me and my friends, international students of Tel Aviv University, and fellows of the Irwin Cotler Institute for Democracy, Human Rights, and Justice, had learned incredibly valuable lessons during our time here in Israel. We met with notable guest speakers and prominent figures of Israeli society, and we spoke with various different religious and ethnic groups who all refer Israel as their home. The knowledge and the experiences I've gained in the program teach me the importance of education, increased transparency, and greater interaction. They are essential in dispelling bias and misconception, in combating racism, anti-Semitism, discrimination, and extremism. Furthermore, I could not emphasize enough of how significant they are in the development of a culture of peace, mutual respect, understanding, and tolerance. Although the process might not be an instantaneous one, we should always believe in the firm conviction that the result would never betray the endeavor. Thank you for your kind attention, and God bless you. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Toda Rabba.
And one of the fellows is pursuing a PhD in biology, and what she does is making hearts from stem cells. And don't ask me to elaborate, but that is what she does. But she also has a hobby. She's a singer. So it's my great honor to invite Benita Ghosh to sing for us a short portion from a well-known Indian song, at least well-known in India, about hope and the importance of being guided by hope.
Hello everyone, namaste. I'm a bit nervous, so few seconds. आशाएं 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 कुछ पाने की हो आस आस कोई अरमा हो जो खास खास आशाएं हर कोशिश में हो बार बार कर दरियाओं को आर पार आशाएं तूफानों को चीर कर मंजिलों को छीन ले आशाएं मिले दिल की उम्मीदें हंसे दिल की अब मुश्किल नहीं कुछ भी नहीं कुछ भी उड़ जाए लेके खुशी अपने संग तुझको वहाँ जन्नत से मुलाकात हो पूरी हो तेरी हर दुआ आशाएं खिले दिल की मंजिलें मिले दिल की अब मुश्किल नहीं कुछ भी नहीं कुछ भी गुजरे ऐसी हर रात रात हो ख्वाहिशों से बात बात आशाएं कुछ ऐसा करके देखा खुश हो जाए खुदा आशाएं मिले दिल की मंजिलें मिले दिल की अब मुश्किल नहीं कुछ भी नहीं कुछ भी थैंक यू
Representing the Cotler family, I invite Michal Kotler-Wunsch.
Thank you everybody for being here at what is a really moving moment for our family, for my dad, for my mom, and for all of us. I can't think of a more appropriate day, and thank you, Ria, for pointing out, a more appropriate day to be holding this event than the 75th birthday of this country that we are sitting in right now. And I want to remind everybody that on May 14th at about 4 o'clock in Tel Aviv, 75 years ago, this nation state of an indigenous people returning to an ancestral homeland after millennia of exile and persecution was announced right here in Tel Aviv. That incredible country that we're sitting in now, a work in progress for sure, democracy being a messy business, that has been what has instructed my dad's life. And the ambassador so aptly said, when I introduce my father with all of his titles, what I tell everybody, including our own children who are here, is that he is a human rights warrior. And what has led him through time, and having Natan sitting here with us, Natan Sharansky, what has led him through time are the cases and the causes, the individuals, like Natan Sharansky, like Raif Badawi, like deceased soldier Hadar Golden, whose parents are here, Simcha and Leah, who was held captive, for 9 years alongside another deceased soldier, Oron Shaul, and 2 Israeli civilians, Avera Mengistu and Hisham Sayed, an intersection of the entire Israeli society, held hostage by Hamas for the last 9 years in standing violation of international law and human rights, which we will hear about. It is those cases and causes, thank you, Dad, for teaching us the understanding that is those cases and causes that are your living legacy to everybody in this room, to your incredible fellows that are going to go back to their home countries, understanding that foundational principles, those foundational principles that enabled you to be able to speak for Natan when he was imprisoned by Putin, well, former Soviet Union, but the same Putin's Russia of today holding Vladimir Kara-Murza. The same understanding that those foundational principles have to be applied equally and consistently. That what has enabled the scourge of anti-Semitism that we see rising, and Dina Porat here in the room tonight can attest to, what has enabled that scourge of anti-Semitism to mutate in the way that it has, to demonize, to delegitimize, and to single out the state of Israel is not understanding the mechanism of double standards, the dangers of double standards. And so your incredible fellows, wherever they go back to, and we had the opportunity to speak to them together, take that with them. And I can think of no more important contribution to hope than what Ricky and Elaine Dabrowski have enabled with this program at Tel Aviv University on this day, the 75th birthday of the State of Israel, understanding that it is the future that's sitting here in this room, that it is the living legacy that passes the baton from one generation to another, that understands that hope, as the late Rabbi Sachs taught, as opposed to optimism, is not the belief that everything will be okay. It's the belief that together we can make sure that it will be okay. In that sense, hope, as opposed to optimism, is an active virtue that takes a great deal of courage. And I remind us all, as we sit in this miraculous 75-year young state of Israel, Jewish, democratic state of Israel, I remind us all that Hatikva, the hope, is our national anthem. So thank you, Daddy, for giving us all the basis for carrying on the important work, the action, and the courage that gives us continued hope. Thank you.
We are approaching the end of this part of the ceremony, and it is a good opportunity to thank the many, many people who joined together to make it work. You know, it was Mark Twain who said that people have no idea how much effort you have to invest in order to give a casual speech. So the one who invested those many, many efforts is actually Jordan Falkenstein, and I think he deserves your applause. Jordan is also an Ole Chadash, I think, so it's a good opportunity to welcome him to the, well, Canadian and an Ole Chadash in Israel, so it's a good opportunity to welcome him to the family. It's not an easy family, but nevertheless. And now I invite the Honorable Irwin Cotler.
May I begin by thanking my daughter Michal for her moving words. I have to tell you that I'm so moved by what she said that I hope you'll all carry her inspiring message with each of you as we move forward. As well, my appreciation to Ambassador Stadelbauer for her kind words, President Porat for his remarks, Professor Shavit, really for all those who've spoken, and the students and the singing. It's been really, you know, an incredible framing for this day. And I want to begin by expressing my appreciation, first and foremost, if I may, to my wife, Ariella, not only as an Eshet Chayil, also an Ezer Kenegdo, and people who know what I mean by that, as I've often said, and you'll see this in the movie, that she's always been there in the trenches with me, though not always on the same side. But a pleasure. She is the one who inspired this institute, without whom the idea for this initiative would not have been born. So thank you, Ariella, for this. To President Porat, to Amos Elad, to Tel Aviv University, a heartfelt appreciation for embracing this initiative as you have done. So kol hakavod really to you and the Senate of Tel Aviv University. I want to as well in that regard pay tribute in particular to my cousin Rick Dabrowski, my cousin Elaine, for being not only the principal donor and philanthropist, but for the support, the engagement, their involvement not only with regard to the institute here, but the establishment earlier today of a life-saving initiative in the field of health and cancer research. So kol hakavod to you in that regard. And to Professor Uriah Shavit, who launched really the flagship program of the Graduate Fellows in Human Rights. And you heard two of them speaking here today. I had the opportunity to engage with them over the semester from time to time. It is, as you can see, an exemplary group who will be ambassadors for human rights and ambassadors for Israel, democracy, justice, and human rights when they return to their countries of origin. So thank you all in that regard. And for the good song of hope, Benita, thank you for that, because you really inspired us in moving forward with a song of hope. And may I at this moment, remember and pay tribute to my parents of blessed memory. Because it was my father who taught me at a very young age, before I could understand the profundity of the message, when he said to me that tzedek, tzedek tirdof, justice, justice shall you pursue, as he put it, is equal to all the other commandments combined. This, as he said, must be your life's mission. This, as he put it, must be your moral compass, that which must be your vishinamtam levanecha, that which you must teach unto your children. And I'm particularly happy that 3 of my 4 grandchildren living in Israel are here with us today. The 4th only is not here because he's had to be at army duty, but I can't tell you how moved I am that my grandchildren are with us today. So, kol hakavod. But I have to say that it was my mother, you could say the Ezer Kanagdov to my father, who, when she heard my father say these things to me, would say that if you want to pursue justice, you have to understand, you have to feel the injustice about you. You have to go in and about your community and beyond and feel the injustice and combat the injustice. Otherwise, the pursuit of justice will remain a theoretical abstraction. And so through the teachings of my parents, along with that of Professor Nobel Peace Laureate Elie Wiesel, who became my educational mentor, colleague, friend for over 50 years, together through these teachings, I got involved in the 2 great human rights struggles of the second half of the 20th century. The struggle for human rights and Soviet Jewry in the former Soviet Union, and the struggle against apartheid in South Africa. And got involved with the 2 political prisoners who became the face, the identity, the voice and vision of those struggles. Anatoly Sharansky, where are you, Natan? And Natan Sharansky, who was not only a hero of the struggle for Soviet Jewry, which he certainly was, but a hero of the struggle for human rights in the Soviet Union. So, kol hakavod, Natan. And got involved in the case and cause of Nelson Mandela, who endured 27 years in a South African prison, only to emerge and preside over the dismantling of apartheid and become the president of the first democratic, non-racial South Africa. That too is an expression of hope. And when I think of those 2 struggles, I realize that we are meeting today as well at an important historical inflection moment. And with this, I move to a close. My daughter Michal referenced the 75th anniversary today in the English calendar of the founding of the indigenous state of Israel for the indigenous Jewish people. I've always said that the Jewish people are a prototypical indigenous people, a people that still inhabits the same land, embraces the same religion, studies the same indigenous Torah, speaks the same indigenous language, Hebrew, and bears the same indigenous name, Israel, as we did 3,500 years ago. At the same time as it is a prototypical anti-colonial movement that has returned after years of millennia to its, as Michal has put it, to its ancestral homeland. So this is the first historical inflection moment. The second is the more global one today. We are meeting at a moment of witnessing and experiencing a resurgent global authoritarianism, the backsliding of democracies, assaults on human rights and the rules-based international order, and political prisoners who've emerged not only as a looking glass into this human condition, but as torchbearers of hope at this time. And this will underpin the work of the center, along with the lessons learned from my parents and Elie Wiesel and other educators, the lessons of the dangers of forgetting and the importance of remembrance of Zachor, of the Holocaust as a paradigm for radical evil, as anti-Semitism is a paradigm for radical hate, of the dangers of silence in the face of evil and the responsibility, therefore, to protest, of the dangers of indifference and inaction in the face of mass atrocity and the crime of crimes whose name we should even shudder to mention, namely genocide. And at the same time, as we have this resurgent global authoritarianism, and as Michal has mentioned, we have a resurgent global anti-Semitism. And what we have to appreciate, and this will underpin the work of the Institute, as has been mentioned, is that anti-Semitism is not simply threatening to Jews. Anti-Semitism is toxic to democracies, a standing injustice, an assault on our common humanity. And we've learned only too painfully and too well that while it begins with Jews, it doesn't end with Jews. And so in combating anti-Semitism, we are defending democracy, justice, and human rights. And may I close with the famous words of Hillel, which have such application in our time. Im en anili mili. If we do not understand, let alone affirm, our Jewish values and identity, how can we expect others to understand, let alone affirm them? Ukshani latzmi mani. And if I'm only for myself, what am I? If we do not involve ourselves in the larger struggles for democracy, justice, and human rights in our time, we not only diminish that larger struggle by our absence, we diminish ourselves as Jews. V'im lo achshav eimatai. If not now, when? The sense and struggle for democracy, justice, and human rights must have a sense of urgency about it. To close with the words of Harambam Maimonides, that we should each see the world as divided into half empty and half good, half evil and half good. Therefore, one good deed by any one of us at any given moment in time transforms the ledger of the universe from evil to good. And so we each have that capacity and that responsibility to be engaged in a transformative impact on the universe from evil to good. And we trust that this institute can play a role in that. Thank you all. Litro.
I invite you now to join us for a screening of a documentary movie about Irwin Cotler. First to Stand, directed by Irene Lillenheim and Eddie Neidig, and we thank them for making it possible for us to screen it here. This concludes the ceremonial part of this inauguration. Thank you all for attending, and shalom.